Let's talk about how I help my nonverbal autistic daughter speak. This is the full protocol that I used. I created a neuroplasticity-based instructional framework that I now call NeuroToggle. And I use this to target linguistic circuits and motor circuits. I also used motor skill exercises, muscle vibration therapy to activate the nerves and muscles required. And I gave her a daily multivitamin called Smarty Pants Vitamins for nutritional support. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. I use the green ones with fiber, and I know a lot of people lean heavily into nutritional support and supplements in our community, but the way that I saw it at the time was that trying to just use supplements was like trying to bulk up by taking protein powder without exercising. It doesn't do much. The exercises have to be there. So the exercises for the building of the circuitry is neuroplasticity. So I really leaned heavily into that with using the daily multivitamin so that I knew she had everything she needed every day to physically build those circuits required. I've mentioned that I use my neuroplasticity-based instructional framework, and when you're trying to build skills and behaviors, it's very repetitive work and very time-consuming and long-term. I compare it to ABA therapy, which is harmful, but in the way that ABA therapy takes 40 hours a week, implemented with efficacy to make a difference, NeuroToggle for Kylie was the same way. So the difference between a behaviorism framework and a neuroplasticity-based instructional framework is that a behaviorism approach tackles the behavior after the behavior occurs. So it's not based on observable events and what stimulates the behavior. My neuroplasticity-based instructional framework centers around building the neural circuitry that causes the behavior or the skill to occur in the first place. Through building the circuits, strengthening the circuits, timing the circuits, and expanding these circuits. Speech requires motor circuits and linguistic circuits at the same time. So it's coordinating the expansion between them. The information for how to do any skill and behavior is held in neural circuits. So you can target any skill or behavior, including speech, through building, strengthening, timing, and expanding these circuits. However, there is a very dial-like process to development. So the first stage that I had to get with my daughter was joint attention. First it was, will you pay attention to what I am paying attention to? Then it's mirroring, imitation. Will you mirror back to me what I have shown you? Before it's independent initiation. So for every skill, every linguistic pathway, so every word that I would teach her, every physical movement that I would teach her to make that was required for speech, I had to get these three down. So it was, will you pay attention to this word? Will you pay attention to this movement? Then will you mirror it? Then will you independently initiate it? However, the most terrifying yet important bit of information I learned throughout this process was about language deprivation syndrome. Language circuits are developed in a species-conserved, biologically time-constrained critical period, meaning it is consistent across our species and constrained to a very specific time window. That is unforgiving. Failure to be exposed to the appropriate stimulus or acquire these skills during that time period results in a nearly impossible situation to rectify. As lifelong cognitive consequences. Essentially, if I was not able to get her talking during this critical time period, from all of the things I was reading, was seeing that she would functionally not have a first language, ever. I know this from research on feral children and deaf children who have tried to acquire a first language after that critical period. Even with all of the resources thrown at them, it was unsuccessful. There's always going to be outliers. But because it's species conserved, as a developmental process, the species as a whole is biologically constrained to that time window, so that is the rule, basically. So I stayed at home with my daughter for years, and I worked with her on this all day, every day, and I was not sure if it would work. Our story is anecdotal because of that. I have had parents reach out and say that they've had success with this method, but there's no research formally done on it, so there is no way to say who this will or won't work for. There's no process yet to test different mechanisms and see what's not working to know who it would even help and who it won't. And I hope that someday we get to the point where we are doing more than just flying blind as parents. But if you're curious, this is how I took her from silence to speech. I've had people ask me if I've done this for other people's children. This required me taking time off work and doing this with her 40 hours a week instead of work. So having no income while I try to do this with someone else's child is not financially feasible. I have 2 children I have to support, so I have not had the opportunity to do that. And I only had one nonverbal autistic child, not multiples, so I only had the opportunity to do it for and with one.